I'm in Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new cross-platform Visual C# project for mobile app Xamarin Forms. And I'm just going to call this Stack Layout Demo. And it's going to go into my CData Xam project. Remember, when you keep your path short, I recommend on the PC side, don't put any spaces in your name. And I'm just going to click OK. I'm going to use the blank template, all three platforms, .NET Standard code sharing, and I'm going to click OK. It's going to set up 4 packages in my solution, one of the shared code, then the Android, the iOS, and the UWP package. And we're told here that in order to have the previewer work, we need to rebuild our project. Before I do that, though, I'm going to go to the solution and choose Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. I want to make sure I've got the most recent installed. I want to do this every time I start a new project, or if I'm going into an older project I want to update, I want to make sure I'm using the most recent, particularly the Xamarin Forms, but also the Microsoft Net Core Universal Windows platform. So for Xamarin Forms, I'm going to click on that. I want this to go into all 4 packages. Right now I have 3.4.0 installed. I went 3.6.0, the most recent. I'm going to click Install. And that'll take just a few seconds. I'm going to click OK and accept the license. All right, having done that, I'm going to go to the Universal Windows. So this one will install just into the UWP. Right now I have 6.1.5 and the most recent is 6.1.9. So I'll click Install. I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to close my NuGet Package Manager. I want to make sure that the reference to the shared code is in all 3 of my platforms. So I'm going to right click on the Android. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to roll these up. I'm going to right click on the Android, choose Add Reference. I'm going to go into Projects and I want to choose the Stack Layout Demo. That's the shared code. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to do the same thing for the iOS package. I'm going to add a reference. Again with Stack Layout Demo. Click OK. And then do the same thing for UWP. All right, I'm going to go to the Build menu and build my solution. And you can watch the progress down here at the bottom with the green progress bar. So it's done building. I didn't get any errors. We got a few warnings. I'm not going to worry about the warnings. So those are compatibility issues. And there is my Android previewer. There's the iOS previewer. So we get the default stack layout with a label saying Welcome to Xamarin Forms. I'm going to swap mine around here, swap the panes, and I'm going to expand my XAML code a little bit. All right, we want to focus on stack layouts. And we have this label, Welcome to Xamarin Forms. Notice that the horizontal options here are center, so it's centered, and then the vertical options are center and expand. I'm going to take the vertical options out for now. And when I do that, you'll notice that the item is stacked up here at the top. I'm going to go to the iOS side, so it's a little bit easier to see on the iOS. And I'm going to create another label. In fact, I'm going to create 3 more labels. And you can see we now get 3 labels, one on top of the other, and they stack from the top on the way down. I'm going to come up to the center label. We're going to put the vertical options back in on this one. And I'm going to say center and expand. So that puts it in the center and expands as much as it can, keeping the other 2 labels in place, but I didn't specify what I wanted those to do as far as vertically. So the one above it is at the very top, the one below it's at the very bottom. Now if I just simply say center, notice it doesn't really do anything. It is centered vertically in terms of the stack. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the vertical options on that one. I'm going to go to the very first one. Choose vertical options. And I'm going to set this one to center and expand. And now that one is centered, and the other two are below it, taking up only much space as they require. So this one has centered and expanded to take up as much space as possible. All right, so now I'm going to change this, and this time let's do the start and expand. And now it's up at the very top, and it takes as much space as it possibly can, but puts the other two down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go to the last one and choose vertical options. And here for the last one, let's choose end and expand. And so that one now comes to the very bottom, but expands as much as it possibly can. And since these two are kind of competing against each other, the center label, or that middle label, is in the very center. Well, what if we set these all to center and expand? So now they all try to center their area and expand it, and we can basically get three that are equidistant from each other. If I took out the center one, you can see it brings those other two in a little bit. It's not being expanded. So this one is centered and expanded as much as it can. This one is centered and expanded as much as I can. This one is not expanded, it's just centered. So you can play around with the vertical options. As far as the horizontal options, you also have, we've been using center here, but with the horizontal options, we have the same opportunities. We can center, we can start, which is going to be on the left, end is going to be on the right. So if I chose end for this one, notice it's on the right. If I come down here and chose start for this label, it's on the left. I'm going to get rid of my labels. Let's use a box view. So I'm going to take a box view. This is just a rectangle. I'm going to set its background color to red. I'm going to make a height request of 100 and a width request of 100. Now notice I'm getting this, an exception occurred while rendering the control methods because I haven't finished out this box view. I don't have the closing tag. So I need the backslash greater than. And there's my box view. Now the width request actually ended up filling the entire width. So I'm going to add another option here, and that again is going to be the horizontal options. I'm going to say center. Okay, so there's my box. I'm just going to duplicate this. We'll make this one green. And we'll make another one blue. Now inside the stack layout, I can create another stack layout. We want things inside the stack layout. I'm going to close that tag, and it gives me an ending tag with the slash. I'm just going to position those two apart from each other. I'm going to create a property for this layout of orientation. And this one I want to be horizontal. So the default is vertical. So now I'm going to have a layout that's going to go this way. And I'm going to take those same box views. I'm going to paste them in. I'm going to set these to center and expand. Both the first one and the last one. And so now I get them equidistant from each other. And then after that layout, I'm going to add another box view. It's going to be outside of that horizontal layout, stack layout, and it's going to make this one yellow. I'm going to copy the red, green, and blue again. I'm going to paste those down here. And so now you notice that the stack extends past the page. If we were to test this on our Android, there's our Android. By the way, if you want to change the background color here so that they're consistent across the platforms, you can do that in the content page. You can also do it in the stack layout since that's really the main parent here. But in the content page, I'm just going to change background color equals, and since we're in Visual Studio on the PC, we get all the colors here that are part of the .NET. You can do this programmatically on the Mac, but I don't think it comes up in IntelliSense on the Mac. I'm just going to do a beige. And I'm going to run this on the accelerator. So here's the running emulator, and is now installing the package onto this emulator. So Visual Studio just said it finished deploying, and we should see it pop up here any second. And there's my project. So in this particular view, because of the resolution of this emulator, which is fairly small, it didn't fit very well. I'm going to close this, stop debugging. I'm going to change my emulator to my Samsung emulator, which is a very large screen, and I'm going to deploy it to that. So it fits much better on the Samsung than the smaller emulator, but I still am losing part of it down here. In the next lesson, we'll look at how to add a scroll view, which will allow us to see the objects that are below our phone screen. We'll also look at how to use the frame view. Once again, I would really encourage you to go to the documentation at Microsoft.com for Xamarin and become familiar with what's there. There's lots of tutorials, there's great information. In the Getting Started tab, there are tutorials for many of the different objects we have in XAML. If you go to Xamarin.Forms, there is a whole page here on XAML and also one on user interface. And in the user interface, if you come down to the controls reference, so you have the areas of pages, layouts, views, and cells we looked at earlier. If you come to the views, you can scroll through and see information about all these different views. So here's one on the box view. Gives us some of the popular properties. We looked at changing the color, the width request, the height request. We can look at the API documentation, but you can also look at the guide, and then there's some samples you can look at as well. These are actually projects you could download and run in Visual Studio or put on your phone. And so here's information about the box view. You can see some of the popular attributes for that box view and get much more detail than I can provide you. Remember, box views are basically placeholders. That's how they're used. Maybe waiting for a graphic to come in, we want to put a placeholder until we get that graphic or make that graphic. You can use them for design purposes, and sometimes I'll use a box view just as a spacer, and I'll show you that probably in the next video when we talk about scroll views. Likewise, we want to look at information on the stack layouts. We can come back down to the controls reference, look at layouts. We can look at layouts, and we have layouts with single content, so they have one child. But a stack layout can have multiple children, and so it's in the area of layouts with multiple children. So we put several box views or several labels inside our stack layout. And here's information on the stack layout. I can see the API documentation. I can go to the guide. I can also see samples. So just as we had the guide for box views, we have a guide here for stack layouts. And again, I encourage you just to come through and get familiar with this information and look at the different ways that attributes are used and the impacts that they have. And here we have a vertical stack view that includes a horizontal stack view. Mastering the interface design in XAML takes a lot of practice, and I would encourage you to play around with different options. See the results. That's the best way to learn. What happens if I do this? And see what happens. So practice and play. And the more you do that, the better you'll get at this.